Hello, everyone. This is Sean Smith, and you are tuned in to the Country Fried Outdoors Chasing Your Experience podcast. The podcast that will connect you to resources regionally and nationwide to engage them and you in open, honest discussions so that we can inspire the growth that you need to chase the experience you want. So strap yourself in because here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Country Fried Outdoors Chasing Your Experience podcast. I'm your host, Sean Smith, and on this episode, it's going to be a solo run. It's just me, myself, and I'm going to be discussing several topics over the next, however long we're on here. Hopefully, it'll probably be an hour since it's just myself. But we're going to be discussing a few things. Basically, or mostly the largest part of our discussion or what I'm going to be talking about today is Ohio's deer season, which is coming to an end here next weekend. So today is January 25th. It's a Saturday that I'm recording. And the season ends on February 2nd, which is the first Sunday of February. So the season is winding down. We are in the late season. It's been actually a good year for late season here in Ohio. We've had some cold temps. We've had some snow. So the late season has actually been pretty nice. But I don't want to jump too far ahead and start discussing things. Hopefully most of you have enjoyed your holidays since we're past those, Christmas, New Year's, or whatever holiday that you celebrate. That's fine. Ours was good. It was, hung out with family and stuff, and it was pretty chill. That I came down with some weird, and I want to talk about this for a second because it really put a damper on my late season hunting. Luckily, a couple of my target bucks luckily weren't showing up on camera very often while I was going through this, but right before New Year's, I started to come down with some weird respiratory virus. Like I had a low grade temperature for like a week, and then a really persistent cough, developed after I started to lose the temperature. It's mostly from post nasal drip, and you can see I still have the cough. Like it's been a while. It's gotten a lot better, but I'll tell you what, man. Not that I was like on death's bed or whatever. It's just weird because I was just lethargic, didn't want to eat, and was having a hard enough time trying to keep myself hydrated. But basically forced myself to drink water and other liquids because I just didn't really have the desire to. But after the first week, the temperature started to go away. I started to come around a little bit and started to eat a little bit more and was drinking more at that point in time, but really didn't get back to like almost full swing until probably about a week and a half after that. So almost like 2.5 weeks. And like, it's just like a light switch hit and all of a sudden I just started eating everything again. I ended up losing like 15 pounds during that too. But it was so bad. Like I had no desire to do anything. Like, and I was talking to my wife, which if you know me, like I'm, I don't know if I should admit this, but back in 2020, pretty sure I had COVID and I was on the other side of it. And I went out, gun hunting, wasn't 100% better yet, but, went out by myself, during gun season, and my wife blames me for giving the deer COVID. But, anyways, so just to give you an idea of who I am, like there's not much that will keep me from going hunting. Like I told the wife this year, like if this is how bad this is, like even if I see this buck on camera, like several days in a row daylighting, I don't even think I don't think I can motivate myself to go out to go get him because I've been after him on this one certain buck I've been after. And him and I have been playing cat and mouse all pretty much since gun season. We've been playing cat and mouse with each other. And I'm like, even if he starts like, a very strong pattern that I'm guaranteed if I go out, I'm gonna have an opportunity at him. I don't know if I'd go. It's just how like run down I was. I know most of that was because I wasn't eating, and it was weird, weird. But luckily, I'm on the other side of that and back up and running, and still got some pretty good post nasal drip going on. So as you can hear, did have been going out here recently, and there was another buck that was showing up on one of my other cameras. However, he has disappeared here in the last couple of weeks, and I really don't want to jump too far ahead yet, because I wanted to talk about kind of the season in general in a good chronological order. But I wanted to get that out where, you know, I've been, I've been kind of slacking here the last, little while, but, over half a month I was, not myself, but like I said, we're back at it. But with this episode, with me being on here solo, there's a few topics I want to talk about, and, I want to talk about the good, the bad, some of the experiences I had. And, I made a couple changes this year to what I was using. Not drastic changes, but I did make a few changes, and really dialed in on certain things that I want to take out when I'm saddle hunting. Just kind of walk through that process, walk through all that, walk through the hunting experience in general this season. And then, between, the opening day through archery season, through gun season, and both youth and adult season, because my son was successful during youth season harvesting a doe, and we'll talk about that. And then we'll walk through the late season here, and maybe talk about some potential changes for next year after that. So let's get started on the changes that I made this year for archery season, which is basically where most of the changes came. One of the big changes, was the broadhead that I was using. If you've been listening to the show, you know that I'm a big proponent of, I've been a big proponent of fixed blade heads, namely iron will broadheads. I like their single bevels. I still do. I don't have anything, I still have them. But I also carried a mechanical with me, at least one, maybe two. And, every year, the majority of the DR shot was with the fixed blade with the single bevel broadhead. And then at certain point, I would shoot, the mechanical. And I've had success. And the mechanical I was using at the time was a Sever Robusto. The main reason why is because it's 150 grains, and that was 150 grain. And I was shooting a 150 grain iron will, right? So I wanted the same grain weight. So I was shooting the Robusto, which is a stainless steel with a over 2-inch cut, which I think is like a 2.1 cut, something like that, in that frame, right? So this year, Sever came out with their new 1.5 hybrid, which is technically a 4-blade. It's got the 2 fixed blades, which is a 0.7-inch cutting diameter, and then of course their typical, expandable at 1.5. I don't know if you guys follow Lusk Archery Adventures and several other YouTube channels that test broadheads and gear, but Lusk, I think, does a really good job at it, depending upon who you're going to follow, whether it's like Ranch Fairy, Lusk, whoever, right? Because, Ranch Fairy kind of, I don't know if he specifically targets Lusk in some of his comments, but Lusk tests things. When he does his test, he does some penetration tests through gel, through MDF, through cardboard. He does his angle test through MDF, and he changes a little bit every year. And then he always ultimately ends the test with the broadhead being shot to a cinder block. The 1.5 from Sever, the original, has done extremely well through those tests. And there's a lot of good mentions about the 1.5 for its penetration, its durability, and its accuracy. Sever came out with the 1.5 hybrid, right? And as soon as I seen this announcement, I commented on a video for Lusk. I said, "Hey, love the video." I forget which head it was. It was, it was a good head. I said, "Love the video, love the testing. This is another great test, a great video. You do a good job explaining things and not weighing too much on one thing, like letting people make up their own minds on what's important to them." But did you see that 1.5, the new Sever 1.5 hybrid, and hopefully you'll have a test come out, a video come out soon. He responded back. He said, Wait till next week because it's coming out. So apparently he had gotten hold of some already when it tested it. So of course I was ready to watch this video when it came out. He ended up like it was the by the time the testing was done, like it was the highest rated broadhead he'd ever tested, right? And he's tested some really good ones. And once again, grain of salt, how you take this. And I understand there's some difference of opinions, but he's like, this is a really, really good head. And so I ended up this year, I ended up buying a few of the 1.5 hybrids and decided to hunt with them this year. And, they got to go along the quiver. So basically when I switched out from my elk, which was majority of my broadheads was the 125 single bevel, wide iron will, I switched all those out and replaced those with pretty much the 1.5 hybrid, Sever, also in a 125. I like it a little bit I know maybe we might be splitting hairs here, but the hybrid comes in a 100 and a 125 version. I like to bump up to the highest grain available for the most part, not all the time, but something above the 100, because to get 100, you have to, shave some material off somewhere and lose material somewhere. I don't think once again, I think we're splitting hairs that this might not actually be detrimental to the durability of the head, to the point to where it's actually a problem. But just for my own peace of mind, I usually try to go with a little bit of the heavier head, especially these days. Like I've shot a lot of 100 grain broadheads in the past and they've all worked. I've had some issues with some. I've had some ferrules break on shots in deer, not hitting the ground, but actually in deer on the 100 grain side. And then, I bumped up kind of up to like a 150. That was because it just what material was made out of. And then now I'm back down to a 125, which I paired that with the RIP TKO and a 250 spine with their stainless steel shock insert in the front. Once again, I had no aluminum on an arrow, unless it's the actual arrow itself. No aluminum inserts, nothing. They bend, they're crap. Even the shock inserts in Victory, you can be mad all you want, but they suck, right? They're going to bend. You're going to have issues with it, right? The shock inserts, which are aluminum that the arrows are shipped with, I don't even use them. And to be honest with you, I think most arrow companies need to just get away from just shipping out a specific, like this is just the base model. This is what you get. And then you have to buy an additional insert if you want something else. Honestly, I think most arrow companies these days, especially if they have options for inserts, should allow you to pick which insert you want with the arrows. So you're not wasting money and they're not wasting materials or whatever, trying to sell something that you're going to buy, another insert for. Now, once again, that's probably more money for them because they figure out the cost for the aluminum insert to be with that arrow. And then now you got to go buy another insert. You're going to buy another insert. So maybe it's not a big deal to them because they're getting, money on both ends. But really seriously, I think, for the customer service side of this, and there are some guys that are just happy with aluminum. I've heard some discussions that, if you don't shoot a lot, like if you're going to go out, practice a little bit before season, and then your arrows are strictly for hunting, and maybe you're not going to run into an issue with that aluminum insert. However, you shoot like me a lot, first few times in the target, you're going to develop a wobble in that insert, which either means you're going to have to replace the insert, which that could be a whole ordeal depending upon what glue you use. I know I'm rambling, I'm going down a big tangent here, but once again, it's going to develop a wobble. And once it has that wobble in it, like broadhead flight's going to be crap. So it's not beneficial at that time, right? You find yourself replacing the insert. I just don't want to deal with that, right? I decided to go with they're 60 grains. It's the shock stainless steel inserts from Victory that I use for the arrows. I like them. I'm not going to lie. Like there are certain times with hard impacts, they bend. I shot a deer this year. Still not 100% sure where that arrow hit, but it hit something extremely hard. And I'll talk about this coming up, but because I don't blame the broadhead. I don't blame anything. Like I don't blame any of it, but it's just to get that out there. But I will get to this story. But when I found the arrow, the insert had bent. This is the first time I've bent one of those stainless steel inserts in like a deer or in an animal. I've hit hard things like rocks, because I missed a target, or, my backstop is basically just, fill that we removed from one part of the yard to the other. So it's got, Lord knows what all in it, that if the arrow impacts it, there's a good chance that the insert gets bent, right? So don't get me wrong, I've had to replace inserts, through target, from just practice. But that's because I've hit something hard and I missed. Every time I hit the target, I've never had a problem with it. I've been using the same arrows all season long for 3D, and I've never had an issue with the inserts. Like, they've been fine, right? So yes, you hit something hard, it's probably going to bend the insert. I get it, right? It's not perfect, but it's better than the aluminum, and I trust it a lot more. But anyways, so I have that with the RIP TKO and the 250 spine. I have 3 of the AAE hybrid 26s, and then the IP5 knock that comes with the RIP TKOs. And the total arrow weight is 475, about 476, 475. So I've dropped down from about a 500 grain arrow down to 475. And so that was one of the big changes that was made this year. I know it's just a 25 grain difference, but obviously it's helped with, with pin gap, reduce the pin gap a little bit, things like that, right? And also, the site that I've switched to this year was the option Canyon Pounder, which is a pricey site. I get it. It's very pricey. But with that site, I've been able to dial out to about 130 yards with that setup, be able to max out 130 yards. And that's even, there's still clearance. It's just, that's as far as I can get the site to dial into. So, I've been happy with the setup. It's flown really well. It's been very, very successful for me in the deer woods. I will probably stick to that. Well, I'm definitely going to stick with those broadheads. I do like the 1.5 hybrids. Outside of that, like, the other change, like I said, was the Canyon Pounder sight. And I want to discuss that just a little bit. I shoot 3D a lot during the summer and the off season, and then I get into the hunting scenarios, right? And I had a dual track before, which worked decently, right, for hunting. There was times that, of course, I had to dial. I've been lucky. The buck that I shot using the dual track, he had come out into an open field looking for a fight. He heard me rattling, so he came out looking for bucks. And I was able to get him to stop. I was able to range him, get dialed, get him to stop, draw, and shoot him without any problems, right? I don't know if that's going to work all the time, especially during the rut, because deer are moving a lot, especially if a buck's on a hot doe, they're moving around a lot. And also in the elk woods, like, you hear everyone talk about it, and I've experienced it this year where the elk comes in to about 30 yards. So if I dial into 30 yards with that sight, that means I have another pin that's lower. And right now, the way my one setup is that the top pin or the center pin would be 20 yards, and then the other one is right around 40. It's between 35 and 40. So if I dial down to 30 yards, do the math, that might put you closer to mid, about 45 to pushing 50, right? So, I mean, it gives you a little bit of gap to work with. But this year in the elk, hunting elk, bull come up, he stopped at 30 yards, and then he boogers off, right? And so he's stopping at different, distances. And, I had a multi-pin sight at that time, which makes it easier to aim, because you don't have to take the time to range or guess and then dial your sight into that. Like, you already have these pins ready to go. So I think it's a benefit to have a multi-pin sight for hunting purposes. Now, how many pins you put on there, that's your preference, but it is beneficial. And that brings me to the Canyon Pounder, right? So the dual track, it is a 2-pin sight at the end, right? And it's a great target sight, and actually it worked pretty good for the whitetail woods. I don't know if I would take it elk hunting. Matter of fact, I know I wouldn't. But it's worked well for the whitetail woods after I, worked out some nuances with it. With the Canyon Pounder, what's nice about it is that you can switch it from a single pin. So if you're target shooting, during the summer, during the off season, you have a single pin, or, if you're sitting on a fixed site, such as like a a feeder or some type of a fixed location that the deer are going to come to and stay at, like a destination site, maybe you stick with a single pin because you can dial in and then, make your adjustments as you need to. But not only is this site a single pin, there is a front panel on it that is magnetic that attaches with very strong magnets that you can swing out, make it a single pin, or swing it back in to make it a multi-pin site without having to change the head or the site. All the other sites out there, you have to buy a new housing, and especially if you want to switch from a single pin from your target days over to a multi-pin for hunting, you'd have to buy a whole new housing. Not the case with the canyon pounder. You can switch back and forth as you need to, right? And it comes with 2 indicator pins. One is for your center, which would be your center pin, which is I usually have its home setting at 40 yards. And with that one, I can dial into 120, about 110 yards. And then my other pin, I've got the 5-pin version. So I got a 20, 30, 40 is the first mover. 50, 60 is my second mover. And it has another indicator on the back side of it that is just strictly for the 60-yard pin, or that bottom pin, whichever you dial it into. But I have mine set for 60, and that one can get out to about 130 yards in the movement of the sight. So I really, really like this sight. This thing's almost like bomb proof. It's pretty heavy. So it does have a little bit of weight penalty. It's a little expensive. But for me personally, I think it's worth it because I don't have to switch back and forth and worry about readjusting my sight because I've switched from a single pin to a multi-pin. So it allows me to use the same sight throughout the entire season. This sight has obviously the third axis, all the axis adjustments. There is no, I'm trying to remember, I don't think there is a way to lock the sight down. But to move the sight is really, it's not too stiff and it's not too light. Like, it's just perfect. And the dial on it's actually like a knob at the top and the bottom that you can, either side you can turn to get the sight to move up and down. I think if you're going to pick a sight who has a really good like knob for turning or moving your elevation or your slider, it's hard to beat a Black Gold, right? They've got a really good knob. But this one, it's like a beefed up version of like the Excel landslide, although it moves faster. Like the Excel landslide is a slow moving adjuster, basically because it is meant for target shooting, really. I mean, you can use it for other things. Don't get me wrong, I get it, but it's really housed in the target world where you don't have to adjust quickly. The Canyon Pounder is like a faster version of that with beefier knobs, if you want my honest opinion. It doesn't click either, like you hear on some of the target sites. It doesn't click. It's nice and smooth and quiet. So there's a lot of good things about this sight. If you're in the market for a sight and you want something that is going to be able to handle both target and hunting, the Canyon Pounder might be something you want to look at. I'm not saying rush out there and buy it. I'm not saying that's absolutely the best thing ever. It's the thing that works for me. Obviously, there's other versions of the sights out there these days. And like I said, you can get the multi-pin sights and you can absolutely shoot targets with the multi-pin sights. Like, you absolutely can do it. But if you like a single pin look for target shooting and you want a multi-pin for, hunting, you're either going to do one of two things with that. And like I said earlier, you're either going to have to buy another housing or you're going to have to have a whole nother sight. And so this is stuff you're going to have to adjust back and forth. Granted, does it take a lot of time? Depends on the site, depends on you as a shooter, right? There's a lot of variables that go into that. But generally speaking, no, it doesn't take a lot of time. But, it's just extra work that you can avoid. But the Canyon Pounder sight, definitely like it. Still shooting the V3X, the 33. Not changing from it this year, and it has performed flawlessly. Love that bow, and really, that's most of the big changes I've made. Still running saddle, still one sticking. So the saddle platform that I use is the X-Wing from Latitude, and I basically got that for the size and the weight. Like, this thing is so lightweight, so easy to pack. You just barely notice that it's there. And it's an odd shape that is so compact, so lightweight for what it is, but yet it seems roomier than what it actually is, right? And I pair that with a set of ring of steps. Now, that not the actual brand ring of steps. What I bought was the Hawk monkey bars. I don't know if you can still get those or not. It's not their foldable version. It's they're always, it's just their one piece metal. It's like aluminum. The fold version, I've seen those, and they have a really skinny base that attaches to the tree, so they like to move a lot, right? The monkey bars just have a little bit of a wider base, which helps stabilize them against the tree. Now, they do come with a cam strap. I don't like cam straps for ring of steps. I don't like cam straps for this, and I'm going to tell you why. It's because I don't care how tight I pull on this cam strap. I cannot get those ring of steps or those steps to hold still. Like they want to move a lot. And I tug and I pull and I pull and I tug, and it just doesn't get tight enough to the tree to keep them from shifting. So what I did is I went on Amazon, and I don't even remember the name of the brand, but I got an endless loop ratchet strap, which means it's just a tag in 1 inch, about the same size as the cam strap that it came with, so that you have basically it's your ratchet strap. It's got the binder on one end. On the other end, there's no hook. It's just the strap goes out to the end, right? And I ran that through all 4 steps. And then when I climb up in the tree, I'm ready to set it. I'll set it in conjunction with the X-Wing platform, get the steps set where I want them to be, get that tag in, run it through the binder, and then I cinch it down tight to where these steps don't move. And this allows me to have 360 coverage around the tree. With the one sticking, I still rappel down the tree, still using the Mad Rock Safeguard. And with it, I have about 40 foot of Canyon. I think it's Canyon 4, I think. Don't hold me to that. But 40 foot of it. This year I did switch how I was using paracord for my pull-up rope, which also helped me which is basically my retrieval rope for my rappel rope or my tether line. Since once you rappel down, you can't reach up to grab the rope. You got to kind of pull it out. So I switched from it to a Dyneema style rope from Sergeant Knott's, and it doesn't stretch. Really, I haven't noticed any stretch at all, and it's a lot thinner and a lot more lightweight. And it's actually worked out really well. Because with the stretch that I got from the paracord, although I was successful in retrieving my rope every time that I used it, it could get a little bit difficult because you didn't have enough energy, because it got lost in the stretch of the rope of the paracord. If I had to tug a little bit, swift and hard to get the quick link to kind of break free from the tree. But anyways, that was the other change I kind of made for the year, and it's actually it's worked out really well. But yeah, those are kind of really the changes that I've made that are actually kind of, I don't know, noteworthy. Everything else is still the same. Still running the tethered lockdown saddle, which I think they call it the Ultra Lock now or something. I forget what they call it these days. But I have the original version that had the pockets that were attached to it. You're running it. I did switch what pruners I was using. I ended up getting a pair of they're foldable, actually. I was looking for a pair that was foldable that since they're sitting in my saddlebags, with some stuff that probably shouldn't get cut, like my lineman's rope or that haul rope or that pull up rope. I wanted a foldable pair so that the blade and the scissor part was actually protected by the handle. So I did a web search, and sure enough, Hunter Specialties has one. I bought it. They are good. I've had better. Let me just say this, they are sufficient for the job they are intended for. I've not had a problem with the handle. There's not the problem with grip. It's just, I don't think they cut as well as some other pruners do. but they work. Like I've actually, they work and they fold up and they fit into saddlebags really easy. The other thing I did is I switched over to a Wicked Tree gear saw, extremely lightweight and cuts uber fast compared to some of the other ones I've used. So definitely worth looking into for those, just for the compactness, especially if you're trying to be as minimalist as possible. One of the things I did also, one of the things I added to my list of stuff, which, I talked about this earlier in the podcast, where I was using the deer drags from Uncle Stubbs, and I've used them all this season, and I love them, absolutely love them. Especially if there's more than one of you that's able to drag, because we finally, one of my buddies shot a doe, and we were able to link up two of the straps to each other, and we both, were able to pull on the deer. So much easier. And also I have the drag bag, which I haven't used all year until this late season. And my most recent doe harvest, there's snow on the ground. I'm like, let's try this drag bag out. So I threw her in the drag bag, attached to the drag strap. And let me tell you, it was so much easier. The only issue I had with it was that she wanted to tend to slide downhill if there's a little bit of an incline. If I was side hilling, she wanted to kind of slide. I mean, not like just take off from me, but had an affinity to want to go downhill a little bit. Wasn't a big issue. It's just, something to keep in mind. That maybe, as you go to route your way out. But I'll tell you what, man, it made the drag so much easier. I guess that's really the big changes that I made. So the kill kit that I have all together. So I have a Kifaro pull-out pouch that's blaze orange. If you notice, I like blaze orange. I don't like losing stuff in the woods. So blaze orange is usually my go-to color. I have a Packlight buck knife. I guess they're a regular field knife. I have a skeleton gut hook from Maxima. I don't know. It's some brand I got off of Amazon. And then, of course, I have the butt out tool from Hunter Specialties. I carry a length of paracord, not a big one, probably about, it started off as about 2 foot length. And the only thing I really have that in there for is I cut off a section of it so I can tie off the large intestine after I use the butt out tool. I can tie off on it and then cut the butt out tool off of the intestine. And so that when I'm ready to pull all the guts out, it just it doesn't dump all of its contents inside the body cavity as you pull that large intestine back through. So have it. And then I got on Amazon and bought bulk shorter length gloves and also bulk rubber gloves for, basically deer cleaning and processing. I know some people are like, oh, you're a sissy, but you got to think about it in terms. There's a reason why a lot of people are telling you to use gloves these days, because there are some things that you can contract through blood from animals, and not necessarily deer, but maybe some other animals that are out there, especially like hogs and things. If you're into hog hunting, there's a few things you can contract from them, especially if you have like open cuts or open wounds on your hands. So using cleaning gloves as you're cleaning is probably a good idea. And I just got myself into it because the cleanup's so much easier. And it helps keep most of my clothes clean. I still get a little bit of blood on me here and there, but not a big deal. But I bought a bulk of those, and I put together packages in like a quart size Ziploc bag, where I've got a pair of the shorter length, pair of the typical glove, and then I put like 2 or 3 individually wrapped wet ones in there to help clean up afterwards. And I use those not only just for my hands or whatever else, but I also use those to clean up the knife and a couple other things. So when I go to put it back in my bag, it's not making a big old mess. And then that quart bag that I have everything, all these, the wet wipes and the gloves packed in, I use that as a trash bag so I could throw my dirty gloves in there. And then I also, whatever, additional trash that I collect, I could throw in there. And it just makes it easy and easy to dispose of. So I made that packaged it myself. You can go out and obviously I think there's companies that have those prepackaged stuff made for you. I think, well, this is all it is. I'm just going to do it myself. So, because it's a lot cheaper that way. And that's what I did. I ended up doing that. So I think I put together like 6 of them because it's an amount of deer I'm allowed to shoot here in Ohio. And, just so I had them ready to go. And, I'll grab one. Once I use one, I grab one, put it in my, a fresh one in my kill kit. Knife sharpener, work sharp, field knife sharpener. It's not the long one. It's the V one that's got the, where you kind of slide the blade through. I know there's some differences of opinions about those, but for what I need it for, it works pretty good just to keep that, buck knife sharpened up if I need to touch it up. And then I got a spare light, a small little tiny little micro light that I keep in there with the just in case I need it in the event that my main light dies or something happens. I at least have a spare. I did downgrade. When I say downgrade, let me rephrase that. I downsized my pack. Latitude has a new series of packs out, and they had what they called the Ranger 11 because I've downgraded. I don't carry much stuff into the woods with me pack wise, but I need something that's going to be able to carry a single one stick from Tethered, right? I need that, and it needs to be able to carry my platform. And then I have the Lone Wolf pocket arm, the Panasonic camera, and maybe one of my action cams, and also my kill kit. And the Ranger 11 was big enough to do all that for me because my saddlebags on the Ultra Lock or the Lockdown, whatever it is we're calling it these days, are big enough to carry almost everything else that I need. I went that route. It's actually worked out pretty well. I would say for the late season though, you're probably going to want a bigger pack because they're more than likely going to be carrying other stuff in with you. But for most of the season that I was saddle hunting, it worked out really well, especially from late to mid season. It worked out well. I've been using it here in the late season too because I've not been saddle hunting. I've been hunting out of a blind, and it's been able to carry the bare necessities of what I need, like my kill kit and and it's got 2 bottle holders on it. So I've been carrying in some hot chocolate or coffee with me, and then also water on the other side. And then I keep my headlamp in there. But outside of that's the pack has actually worked pretty well for me. So that's pretty much the gear that I've been hunting with, like wise. Still using the UV buttons release. I love that release. And I don't use my thumb to activate it. I pull through the shot. So come the full draw, get anchored. And then I don't use my bicep or try not to use my bicep as much as I do my shoulder and the larger back muscle to kind of pull and put tension on the, it's a push pull. More pull than push. The push is just enough to keep the bow from, moving, while the pull is basically putting pressure on the release and the button and the thumb button until it goes off. And it's been very, very accurate for me that way. And I know there's a lot of different ways to shoot a thumb release. A lot of people out there tell you one way or the other. You got to find what works for you. And that's the one that works for me. But still like that release, and don't think I'm going to be making a change from it anytime soon. What else? I mean, that's pretty much about it. We'll talk more about the gun when we get to gun season. But so let's start off with the bow hunting this year. The opener, I was successful, shot a doe on the opening day of, actually the opening morning of bow season here in Ohio. Did some scouting, and basically, this year we were under some drought conditions. It didn't affect all crops, but there were some locations where some crops were kind of lacking. And one spot in Harrison County I hunted, they had put soybeans in, but they didn't do very well because of the lack of moisture that we had. And so trying to find alternative food sources obviously was a big thing. And like last year, there was enough oak trees, if not an abundance of oak trees, that were dropping acorns, which could be a problem in itself. But I found a couple locations that had acorns falling, and I had scouted out a few, had done some recon on some mock scrapes, and some cameras run on those. And on opening day, I decided to set up in a spot that had a lot of good, I wasn't looking for antlers quite yet, but I wanted a doe to go in the freezer. And so I had a spot that had some good doe activity, and went and took the saddle up there, got set up in the morning. Probably about half hour in, I had two does come in. It was a family group of doe, which was two of them in it. They worked their way towards me. They were actually almost right underneath of me, and the one caught me moving the camera to get her in frame. And so she got a little nervous, but not fully booked out. But she did she was sitting about 15 yards from me, and she kind of took off and went up an incline and then kind of worked her way back down because she wasn't 100% sure what was going on. So she worked her way back down to about 30-ish yards. When she originally took off, I drew, and I just kind of followed her. She walked back down till she got to the opening and stopped, and then just pulled through the shot and released that rip TKO with the Sever hybrid. Smoke, good hit. She turned, ran up the hill, and then fell right back down the hill. And I don't honestly, from where I shot her to where she ended up falling, she probably ran a little bit more than that, but she didn't go very far. She fell over. Didn't even have to track. I watched her, and basically she was only about 10, 15 yards from where I had shot her. Got her taken care of. Used the Uncle Stubbs to get drag strap to get her out by myself. Worked out pretty well. What I found worked really well for me with that is that I wrap the strap around the neck of the deer, and also I bring both front legs up because you girth hitch that. The way the strap works is that there's a handle on one side and then there's an open loop on the other, and you have to girth hitch it around whatever you're going to drag. So I girth hitch it around the neck, and then I bring the legs and put it inside that girth, basically girth that loop that create with that hitch, and so that the legs get pinned up against the neck, and so that as I'm dragging, it actually kind of also reduces the drag. Yeah, double use of that word there. But as I'm pulling, it reduces the drag because it's kind of lifting the deer up off the ground a little bit. That made it a lot easier for the drag. Now, deer drags, going uphill sucks. I don't care what it is. It's always going to suck. But this made it a little bit more palatable, and it did make it easy. No hand fatigue, because the way they design that is it has a handle on it, but also has a strap that kind of cinches down around your hand. So you're not relying on just your grip strength. It actually will hold on to your hand as you go to drag. So she was the first one, got her taken care of in the morning. I hate to admit this, but as I was field dressing her, I ended up pulling my back out when I was trying to pull on some of the guts. So once I got her out, I was a little stiffened up. And I was like, I gotta go. I gotta go, and got her to the processor and got her taken care of. And I think I was done until the next weekend. I think. Then went back out, and I went to Harrison County the next weekend, and ran into a little bit of an issue there. Sat up on another hot oak tree, and about last light, a little bit before last light, I had two does come in. The problem was the wind had shifted on me from that, from where it was in the day to what it was becoming at night, and they had picked up on the scent a little bit of me in the tree. They weren't 100% sure what it was, and they ended up stalling and not coming in until about last light. So finally, one of the two of the adult does came in the range, gave me an open shot. This time I was using the Iron Will single bevel 125 wide, same arrow. It's the Rib TKO, about 475 grain arrow, about 20-yard shot. Get drawn back, get anchored, pull through the shot. Everything felt good, everything looked good. I can't see where the arrow impacts. Here it hit the deer, and she takes off, and she looks like she's favoring one of her front legs. So I'm thinking, okay, definitely in the shoulder, which is good at this point because I try to shoot a little bit forward anyways to get into that lethal triangle or that golden triangle, whatever it is people want to call it. And I'm like, well, this is good because obviously the shot's in there. So I gave her time to take off, her and the other doe to take off. And then, I rappel down, get all my stuff collected and packed away. And then I go out to where I shot her and started looking around for my arrow. I can't find my arrow. I'm looking. I'm like, this is different. I was beginning to think that the arrow had passed through with enough force that it hit the ground and must hit a hard spot in the ground and took off. I've had that happen before, and no, that was not the case, and I'll tell you about it. But anyways, so I looked for the arrow for as long as I could because I wanted to see what the hit looked like, according to the arrow, um, but couldn't find the arrow, and not no sign of it anywhere. So then I started to follow blood, and I was following blood, and I knew which way she ran. I watched her run because she'd ran through the open field because I was sitting on where the soybeans would have been, which there were still some out there. They just didn't grow very well. But they were definitely coming to those acorns that I was sitting on, sitting on a hot oak tree. But I followed blood. Blood was good at first, and all of a sudden just started to peter out and trickle out. And eventually I kind of lost blood. And I used Onyx a little bit. I used Onyx to make a track, so I at least had an idea of a direction. But I just started losing blood. It was getting dark. It was getting harder to follow, especially as I got into the very small specks of blood. So I made the decision to kind of go home, and I talked to one of my buddies who lives, here locally, and he volunteered to go back out with me in the morning. I'm like, all right, we'll go. I mean, it's technically cool enough. I think she'll be okay if we, let her go overnight, because it's, it was still getting down. I mean, for that early in the year, it was getting down pretty cool at night, not in the 30s, but definitely like 40s. So I would assume, she should be okay overnight. So we go back out, and, we start following blood, and, the blood, once again starts to trickle out, but we were able to kind of pick back up on little dots here and there. It was a slow track until it started to go back downhill again, and then the blood started to pick up. And I had an idea where she had gone. And so we followed it down. I could see a trail coming out of the wood line that brought into the field, which I had a pretty good guess that's where she had went. And that's what the blood indicated. She went toward, she stayed on that trail and went down there. As soon as we got into there, obviously the blood had opened up a good bit at this point. So I was assuming that, she's going to be in there laying when we got down there. That was not the case. She had been there at one time. There was a bed, but also there was my arrow too. And she had taken arrow with her. Like, I didn't get a complete pass through on her. And that is, which was odd for me, especially using the cut on contact head like that. The only time I've ever had that happen is if I've spined an animal. And that was the buck I shot a couple years ago. Spined him, even with the iron will, although it did sever the spine, like it had poked through to the other side. It wasn't a complete pass. The arrow wasn't laying somewhere, like it didn't just zip through. And that's what I kind of encountered with this. And looking at the arrow, I noticed that the insert had bent, which, once again, I'm talking about the stainless steel, and I kind of talked about it earlier. That's a hard impact that did that. Like, I've shot the same arrow through a lot of deer, never had that issue with the insert bending, nothing. And in this case, this one was bent pretty considerably. And there's some chatter on the blades on the iron wheel too. So obviously I hit something hard. There was a spot where she's bedded down with some blood. We followed blood out of that for a little bit, but then it was just gone. And the next issue we ran into was we were running out of real estate because the neighbor's property was quickly approaching where we were at. So what we did was the next best thing we could do was kind of grid search the areas that we had access to. No more blood, didn't find the deer. And I honestly don't know what ever happened to her. Don't know if she survived. Don't know if she died. I don't know. I'm in not a conclusion that you want from a hunt, but it does happen. And if you hunted long enough, eventually at some point something like this is gonna happen. I know some people are gonna be like, well, I've never had it happen, and okay, fine, I'm happy for you, right? And it's not like it was a terrible shot choice. It's just for whatever reason something happened. I don't know what it was, but like I said, we never did recover her, and it's kind of a kick in the teeth when something like that happens, especially when you practice a lot and you're pretty confident in your shot sequence. But One thing you got to keep in mind is that the animal also has a voice in this. There's a lot of things that happen from the time that the bow goes off, the arrow impacts the deer. Deer move quicker than you think they do when they want to. And, I don't have good video of it, so I don't know for sure. And there's a lot of times that deer can move that you don't pick up on, or that they move more than you thought they did. Obviously going back and watch the video, you would see and pick up on. So I don't know if she ducked, I really couldn't tell you, because I'm not 100% sure where that arrow actually, once again, hit. I just know it hit something hard. Ended up collecting the arrow, and we left, after we grid searched about as good as we could, and, didn't uncover the deer, or, didn't locate the deer. So went back home, and I don't think it was the same day. It might've been. I think going out that evening, you just got to get back out there, and, the easiest way to get over something like that is just get back out there and keep moving forward. Right. And I did. I went to another spot, same farm, another spot, another hot oak tree, and got an opportunity at a really nice adult doe. I'd seen her before. She never gave me a shot opportunity the first time I had seen her, but this time she came over to where I was at and was eating acorns, and about 20-yard quartering 2 shot with the Sever hybrid, and just smoked her. Went through the shoulder and out the other side and buried in the ground. And she ran not very far and piled up. So 2 for 2 with the Severs. I gotta say, I really like those heads. Like, they performed the way they're supposed to. I have not had any problems with them opening. They've been very lethal. And every time that I've made a shot, been very lethal, and they are extremely accurate. That was a saddle hunt. I was up in the tree, didn't have my big camera with me that day. Only had the action cameras and the 360 camera. So luckily she was close enough that everything was kind of recorded through that. You could see everything. It's actually kind of a nice angle too, because you can see everything in the same frame, myself and the deer in the same frame. So you see what I'm doing when I draw, when the arrow releases, and then watch the deer run off. And during her death run, man, there's a fence. I'm about 20, 30 yards off the fence line to a neighboring property. And these guys also, the property I'm hunting, they have cows. That's why the fence is there. And man, when she took off so fast, so hard, that she ended up just smashing into that fence. Didn't even try to clear it, just ran right into it. And that was about where things ended. So got her taken care of. And it was funny that evening, because by the time I got out of the tree and was ready to get her out, it was dark. And I was able to actually drive my truck up to where she was at. I still had to drag her just a little bit, but I was able to get my truck into almost where she was at because of the gate that they had there to get into the pasture or to get into that part of the field. As I'm dragging her, I see these set of eyes that are coming up towards me, and here it's a young steer. I was a little bit too curious. So we had a discussion between him and I chased him off, because I'd walk and he'd kind of start coming up and following me, and then start sniffing where she had been. And then he'd get real curious, a little bit more curious, start to speed up to catch up to me. I decided that it'd be in both our best interests if he didn't do that. So, like I said, we had a discussion about his behavior and his actions, and made my suggestion to him that he needs to stop and just go about his way. And he eventually decided that was probably for the better, and he left me to it, because I still hadn't field dressed the deer yet. And I didn't want him hanging around me trying to field dress the deer, because I didn't know how he was going to take that. Because the property owner before had told me that, they had a bull once, which Benny's no longer with them, but they had a bull named Benny. And Benny did not like the smell of blood, and he got pretty aggressive whenever that was around. So if you shot a deer somewhere around the vicinity of Benny, you had to get the deer out pretty quick before Benny got uber aggressive. So I didn't know how this cow was going to react. Since he was a steer, I didn't know how he was going to react to all this. And I didn't feel like fighting no cow that night. But got him to run off, got her field dressed, loaded up the truck off the processor. Now with two doe down, it's now, and we're now in the first week of October. Now it's starting to focus on antlers, right? And try and get on a decent buck. Like I've got some good photos, good videos of a couple of decent bucks in both locations. So just trying to get on one of them. And which brings us into November in the rut hunt. My buddy and his family from Texas comes up. We spend that week hunting with each other. It was a little bit better week than what we've had previously. Everyone pretty much had an opportunity at shooting a decent deer, a decent buck that this time around. His wife got a shot off and, had shot a buck, but unfortunately they weren't able to find her. I had some opportunities at some decent bucks. It just didn't really pan out. One day so I'm still self-filming at this time. And this is like one of the very first times that actually I think trying to film has hurt me hunting, where I was unsuccessful at harvesting a buck. Because I seen a buck coming up. He was a good buck. Tried to get him on camera, but he just kept moving and I couldn't get him on camera. And by the time I was able to kind of get him in frame of anything, he'd already been well outside of any of my shooting lanes. And because I had him dead to rights at about 30 yards, wide open, and I'm in some pretty thick woods, but he came to a kind of a clearing, gave me a wide open 35-yard shot. And, I didn't have him in frame, didn't have him in camera, and I didn't even try. So that buck, so funny story with him is that he apparently was bedding in the area that I was sitting in, because he's about 50, 60 yards from me. It's too thick for me to try to get an arrow through anyways. He goes and beds down, he's like 60 yards from me bedded down, and it's so thick in there with like new growth and stuff that the only thing I could see is like his antlers every now and again when he raises his head up to kind of look around. And then when he goes back to sleep or, gets relaxed, his antlers disappear. And then I got stuck up there for a couple hours. And then eventually the wind kind of shifted and he didn't booger off, but he had got up and moved and did not come back towards me. And so when I actually confirmed that he had moved, I seen him and he was well further down away from where I was and going away. I decided to go ahead and get out of the tree at that time and kind of switch spots. But, he's bedded down from me for a couple hours. And so I made a decision to go to another location on the hunt. And while I was there in this location, like I had a camera that was run up there, but I've never got a lot of like good photos of like good bucks and stuff. Some does here and there, small buck here and there, but nothing really good. And it must have been in the right spot at the right time because there was a lot of activity up there. And one ginormous buck was chasing a doe. He never did cross over to our property side where I was at, but he stayed on a doe. I heard him running around for a while, and then I seen the doe come up, and I was just hoping that she would come right past me, but she didn't. She kind of veered and went back down to the thicket, and he followed right behind her, once, because he was not right on top of her, but, he was definitely moving when he came up, and he wasn't stopping for me to get any type of a shot at him. So a couple minutes later, about 5-10 minutes later, another good buck comes up from the same location that they were at, but he's not exactly following him. He's actually coming towards me, and he's going to end up giving me, he's coming to where I'm going to get a shot opportunity at him. And I'm in the saddle. I'm not moving. I'm sitting there. I'm watching him, and this deer picks me off. So obviously it's his first rodeo, but he picks me off and he sits and he looks at me, and he's not 100% sure what I am because he doesn't take off, but he knows something's not right. So him and I have a staring contest for a while. He was not as big as the one that I had just seen, but he had really good mass, and he would definitely push 130. Like he was a good deer. But body wise, like he was a mature deer. Like he was a big, thick deer. He was a buck that, like I said in previous podcasts, like he's, I will shoot a buck if I don't immediately go, no, when I see him. He was yeah, when I see him coming, like this is going to happen if I get the shot. Well, him and I is having a staring contest with each other. Some noise going on behind him. So he goes to look and check it out. And so I'm trying to get my bow into position. He would look back at me, And then he'd sit there and stare at me, and then I'd be staring at him. And eventually he snorted and went back where he came from. So I never really got an opportunity to get a shot at him. Generally, like when something like that happens, like when they go to turn and leave, that's when I'll draw my bow, because every now and again, well, actually, most times what happens is that when they go to turn and leave, they're not 100% sure what's going on, especially if they haven't snorted. They're just kind of turning, they're kind of wigged out a little bit. So they turn, but curiosity wins over, and they come back and they'll stop and they'll look back at you. And they usually will get an opportunity to shot at this point. Now, with this guy, dude, he was gone. Pew. So I don't know if he's been shot at before or had been shot at already that season. I don't know. Because there are several other people that hunt around there. He got away, and that was the last good buck that I had near me all season long throughout the rut. The others, they've seen does. We harvested, a doe during the rut. One of the guys did. It just wasn't getting a lot of like big buck movement consistently. Even when I did see like the one that bedded in front of me, he wasn't acting like he was rutting. He was just coming back to bed. So, and this was like the first week or so in November, which leads me to what I've been saying for a while, is that I'm really beginning to push more towards mid to late November or later in November to focus my efforts on buck hunting, because I see a lot more rut activity. Usually during the time frame of the beginning part of November, the rut activity you see is small bucks because they don't know any better. And then eventually the bigger deer start showing up. And that's usually, like I said, that middle to, and it's just usually sometime around youth season is when it really starts to kind of like, that's like the pivotal point, is that, leading into it, it kind of builds up that youth season time frame. It's like really good. And then just kind of starts to slowly wane off. But also I've seen bucks cruising, before gun season and during gun season too. So, which that comes in the last, it's the first Monday after Thanksgiving. So kind of depending upon when Thanksgiving falls, that could be like the last week of November into the first part of December. And that's how it was this year. It was like the first part of December. But didn't harvest any deer during the rut. I passed up on quite a few okay bucks. I mean, nothing. I wouldn't be mad if somebody had shot him. Like, listen, whatever your heart desires. It wasn't like I was like, nah, not that one. Not that one. I did have an opportunity at something that, if he survived, he's going to be something, because he was not, like, body wise, he was not a big deer, but he had a really good rack on him. He's going to be something in about even next year, because I only think he was 2 when I seen him. I seriously think that deer was 2, and he was a really nice 8 to 10 point. Like, I'm pretty sure he was just an 8, maybe push 9 point. Just nice, good mass, good height, and just a nice even spread that was just outside of his ears, but just really good height. Like, he was a nice looking buck. Like, he's one of those ones that if you shot him, you wouldn't be upset that you did. But you also like, I wonder what he'd been like next year, right? Next year, he'll be 3 next year, and if he makes it to 4, to 5, this deer's going to be really special, really, really special. So I can't say I didn't have opportunities at bucks this year during the rut. It's just none of them panned out, and I've got picked off more this year than I think I ever have. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Maybe it's just the bucks are getting used to being bow hunted, so they're getting a little bit more apt to looking up in the trees. I don't know, but it was a little bit different this year. Rut comes and goes. My buddies leave. They head back to Texas, and we're getting ready for youth season, because my son, he's still youth and he's ready to go out with the 360 buck hammer lever action. So I get a couple sites set up for him, ready to go, and that morning we go sit on one site. We didn't see anything, not a thing, right? As we're sitting there, and it's gun season, so I generally, I don't have a problem still hunting, with the rifle, especially with him, because he's a teenager, so his patience is a little bit better than a young kid, but also I don't want to like bore him to tears. So I'm like, hey, why don't we get up? Obviously, we're not seeing anything here right now. Why don't we get up and we'll go down and check out the green, the clover fields down below us. Maybe there's something there. If there is, maybe we can get a stalk on. You'll get a shot. So just pay attention. When we get down there, watch where you walk. Pay attention to those fields. See if there's something out there. Sure enough, we get down there and there's a doe, and I kind of figured she was going to be there. She's a younger doe. She's been there. She's been like a staple this year, like clockwork. She's always in this one field, and sure enough, she was there. I told my son, I said, she's a young doe. There are bigger out here. However, if you want to shoot her, if you want to get set up and shoot her, we'll do that. He was all about it. He wanted to shoot her. I'm like, hey, no worries. Let's do it. So we had to kind of stalk in, because when we first saw her, she's well outside of a range that I would want to take a shot with a lever action, especially the 360 buckhammer. 200 yards is pushing it. So I wanted to get closer. We were over 200 yards when we first seen her, so we had to work down. And also we had to get to a point where we had an open shot. I kind of lead the way, and I get to an open spot because I'm holding on to the sticks for him. He's got the gun short. He's basically got it on sling. I get to a point to where we get an opening or an open shot. We still had some good back cover and some fore cover, but it gave us an open shot to where she was, which would have been uphill from us. And I get to the point, I start opening the sticks, and I wave him down to me. He gets down, and not like he crouches, and he kind of crouch walks down to me, gets the point, gets the gun up on the sticks. I range the deer. I get her at about 140 yards. I tell him, hey, it's 140. The gun's sighted for about 100 yards, which means don't aim off the deer, but aim a little bit higher on the shoulder, because they count for a little bit of the drop that's going to happen. So he gets set up. He gets the scope dialed up, up to like 4 power, because I got a 1x4 power scope on it. Gets set up, gets aim, works through his shot sequence, gun goes off, deer drops, boom. So that was the furthest. So it's the furthest shot my son has made on a deer. It was 140 yards. So he was successful during youth season. He wants to make jerky out of her. So, when we took her to the processor, I'm like, hey, I just need you to grind it, all of it. Like, you don't want the back straps? Then no, just grind it all. He wants to make jerky out of it. And so kudos to also Cunningham's, who did this for us. They knew they heard me say we're going to make jerky out of it. And so typically they would package it up in like 1 pound packages. They did 5 pound packages for us. And even though this was a young doe, we still walked away with like 30, I think it was about 35 pounds of ground venison, even off this young doe. My son was happy, and he had succeeded, that he had shot his deer for the year. And don't get me wrong, I've asked him multiple times, said, buddy, I'll buy you another tag if you want to go. So I think he's happy. He got his deer. He's successful. And so now it's Dad's turn. Gun season comes in. I have not shot a deer with a gun in a very long time. Let me rephrase that. The last time I shot a deer with a gun, it was work related, because I was working as a police officer, and we came across an injured deer, and we usually dispatch them if they're injured, like severely injured. And so if I'm successful, this will be the first time I've shot a deer with a gun while hunting in a very, very, very long time. And I went back to kind of the same clover fields that, he had shot his deer in. Sure enough, got an opportunity at a nice adult doe, about 125 yards, squeezed it off. She got a good shot on her. She went up in the woods, and I watched, of course I watched her expire. Got her taken care of, off to the processor, more steaks, more, more tenderloins, more things like that. So that's deer number 3 for me, 2 in Tusk, 1 in Harrison. That means I have 1 deer left in Tusk County. Now, what I didn't tell you is that opening day, I go up to a place that we call 5 Points. And the reason why is that if you watched our opening day video, you've seen a video of a very big, big, big buck, right? I've got him on camera a couple of times up in that area now. He's starting to show up. And opening morning, I go up there. I get a nice buck that kind of passed behind me. He's a big buck, bigger Didn't get an opportunity to shoot him. I know, but I'm 90% confident it wasn't the big buck that I was looking for. But he passes behind me, never get an opportunity at him. I stay there till about, midday. And then I'm like, all right, it's time to go. And, it was opening day that I shot that deer just because I left, got lunch, came back, and sat in our spot. Well, next day, cell camera goes off 11 a.m. There's that big buck standing right where I was opening day the next day. Just standing there midday, not a care in the world. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm on a mission now. I have 2 deer dead in Tuscarawas County, which means I can shoot one more deer. And I've got this big buck who, as the season goes on, is daylighting more and more. Between me and the neighbor, him and I have been sharing pictures and talking to each other this year. And him and I started getting pictures of this mega buck, right? And, it was not, the problem with it is that this deer he has no discernible pattern. I would go back through all the photos I had of him, even the ones that were shared with me by him. The only thing I was able to come up with is I had a general idea where this buck was going to be bedding at, or where he was, and it was not on our property, or it was not on his property. It wasn't on my property that I've been hunting. But it was close. And, I've made several attempts to go out and hunt this deer. I've, cold fronts, this, that, whatever, right? But I was starting to say that, I was going back through the photos and looking at the photos. So I was looking at wind direction, I was looking at weather, I was looking at all these things. And there was no discernible pattern for this deer, right? There would be days he shows up in the morning. There's days he show up in the afternoon. And there's some days he just show up in the middle of the day. There was a no discernible pattern for this day. And it wasn't like daily. Like there'd be, stretches of days, 2 days before he shows up again. And then the next day, and maybe it was a week before he showed up again. So he had no distinguishable pattern. And despite my best efforts, I would go out, I would set up, if I had like a front moving through, the typical times that you think that maybe might get him up on his feet to come to this location, because I was running a true stump feeder out there that he had been coming to, or he had come to in the past. And, maybe I'd catch him coming to that, and it just never worked out. And so I've set up other locations, maybe trying to catch him, because I had an idea maybe he was just skirting around behind me to go down through a valley below the ridge I was hunting. So I set up a location down there, which he did make an appearance to twice. And that's it. I've only got him twice. And once again, not consistent. It's just out of the blue. The closest I've ever been to him was that when I was up on the ridge hunting, he was down in that valley at that spot at the same time I was hunting. So he had gone out down below me and around me and went to that spot down there and was caught on camera. That's the closest I've ever been to this deer that I'm aware of. So we go through December, and then I told you earlier that around New Year's, right before New Year's, I came down with some weird respiratory virus. I've been watching my cameras ever since. I've not seen him. And the camera that was working off the true stump, it stopped working. So I got to get a hold of Tactican and see if there's a fix that I can, get that up and running again. But I haven't been going back up to the true stump to refill it, because I have these other 2 that are running, that are spin casts. And I just didn't see it wasn't working out, because every time I hunted that, I got one small buck that showed up, and most of the time it was does that were coming in religiously. There was a set of does, but this big buck never made an appearance while I was there ever. And once again, there's several things that kind of went into that. Wind was one of those things that you had to pick the exact right wind. And even then, I think with the wind blowing in the direction that I think would keep it from where he was going to come from, I don't think he would come that way, because the wind wouldn't be in his favor. I think he would have gone a different direction. So I think it was a lose situation there. Not that I gave up, because I still was watching cameras, still waiting. But in the meantime, back in the clover fields, I had set up a feeder and a blind for the late season, and I started to get a good buck, not a mega like this guy, but a a very, very respectable buck that had shown up on it. All right, fine. Right. It's closer. I don't have to go all the way up there. Plus I was coming off from being, sick. I'm like, I'll go sit in this blind. Sure enough, that buck happens to come out, but I get the wrong, but the wind is blowing in an odd direction. And the way he comes out, the wind, it comes from me right to him. And he kind of just turns, he goes right back in the woods. And I haven't seen him since. He's been back on camera during the daylight. Just I haven't seen him since. And it's always on that wind. Like it's a south wind. But when I say always, it's not every time it's a south wind. Like once again, that's another one that I just can't pattern. And I've hunted that spot several times. I've waited till I got a north wind, which is a great wind for that spot, and also a west wind, which isn't like perfect, but it's better than the south wind because the way the deer were coming in, like they technically were coming from the west, but they were, how do I say this? Their trail wasn't directly west. Like if you drew a straight line from my blind west, right? It wasn't they weren't coming from that direction. They were coming a little bit, forward from that. So I guess you would say they were a little bit more northwest is where their entry into the field was. And so west wind wasn't blowing directly to them. And I was hoping on the west wind that would give that buck a favorable wind to come out there, but not enough to pick me off. I have not seen the buck ever since. Not once. And I've been holding off because, and I want to tell you, here in the late season, it's been extremely cold. We've got snow on the ground, and I've got a lot of deer that are coming to this feeder, right? A lot of deer, like a lot of deer. And amongst these deer, at one time, is the largest doe I think I've ever seen, ever. Like a huge, huge Ohio doe. And I'm looking at her, and now, mind you, this is getting later in January now, and we're running a risk that bucks are going to be losing their antlers. And that's why I've been watching the cameras, because I still have some bucks that still have antlers. And then I've got some that I know for sure, like when I see a deer come out, I'm like, yeah, that's a buck that's shed. So now I'm worried, we're getting to the point now to where it's 50-50 now if this or any of the good bucks I'm trying to connect with, if they show up, if they even still have their antlers. It was the 21st and 22nd I hunted. Well, let me rephrase that. It was not that. It was the 19th and the 20th that I hunted around Martin Luther King Day. Hunted that weekend. And then that's when I started to see this doe. I'm like, you know what? We're getting close to the end of the season. After the 20th, when I packed up and went home, I made the decision. I'm like, you know what? If I go back out there again and hunt, if I get a good wind out there again, I go out there and hunt. If she shows up again, I'm shooting her. Now, mind you, this will be my third deer for Tuscarawas County, which means I'm tagged out, which means if I'm successful with her, I'm tagged out in Tuscarawas County. I can't shoot anymore. So even if those big bucks start like daylighting every day on my camera, there's nothing I can do about it. Not a damn thing. I'm like, you know what? It's getting that point in time of year. Like I've got this weekend and next weekend, and that's it. Like there'll be no more. So yesterday was the 24th, Friday. I got done with work early around 11 o'clock. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go out there. The wind is a northwest wind-ish, which is good. So I'm going to go out there. So I got to tell you, I got some new late season stuff because I froze. Like I didn't like freeze. Like, so I wear the Ozio gear, their late season bibs and parka and their beanie. And like body wise, I stayed pretty warm, right? It was my feet and my hands that froze, right? I'm like, you know what? I got on Amazon, ordered a combo box of hand warmers and toe warmers. And I also got online. I found Numa Gear, PNUMA, makes a core heated line, which in the line there's a pair of pants, which are kind of like a base layer pair of pants, a base layer top, and then a hand muff that is battery operated, they have warmers in them. So I went with the top only because it's like a sleeveless shirt that is like a base layer. and it has heaters in the chest and then around the kidneys and stuff. I'm like, ooh, because I've had a heated vest before and I kind of liked it, but this one's actually sits closer to the skin. You could wear it on your skin if you want, like next to skin, but I end up wearing like my First Light merino wick layer. It's a short sleeve shirt underneath of that shirt, and then put my normal. Then I put my furnace set from First Light over top of that, and then the bibs and the parka. And so I'm all kitted out for the cold weather now. I've got my hand warmers ready. I got my toe warmers on. I go out there. I get set up. I turn that little Numa heated shirt on. I am toasty warm. This is great. Like, I do not get cold at all. I really like that shirt. I really do. So much so that I might look at getting the pants. The only problem behind that stuff is it's hand washable only. It is treated. I don't remember what it's called. It starts with a P. Sorry. So my only issue with those is that you gotta be careful washing those. It's hand wash only and let it hang dry or air dry. No machine wash, no machine dry. That's my only negative with those. But they are treated, so maybe that's help with keep them non stinky. I don't know, but I guess I could use the ozone on those. Set up the ozone chamber and run through the ozone to kill any stench off of it if I thought it needed it. But that's neither here nor there. That's the only negative is that is just the care for them. But it's toasty warm. It's got 3 settings: low, medium, high. The low was okay, but the medium, I liked the medium. Medium was like perfect. I didn't try the high. I figured I'd sweat to death on high, but the medium kept me warm. It was about mid 20. It was low 20s going, temperature dropping obviously as the day went on. Low 20s, I had my hand warmers, toe warmers. I was perfectly warm, right? So now it's just a time waiting for the deer to come out. And sure enough, right around 4:54, about 4:50, group of does come out. Let's say antlerless deer, because I think a couple of them were, at least one of them was a smaller shed buck. And in the group was this gargantuan doe. And I can recognize her, obviously, first off, because of her size, but also she had like a really, really furry white patch on her belly. The hair was like really longer compared to the other spots. Like, they really stuck out. Like, that was her distinguishable feature to me. So she comes out, and I gotta be honest with you, like, I actually, like, my heart rate actually clumb, like it was like a buck. Like, I was like, oh goodness, it's her. It was kind of a cool experience because I get excited, regardless. Like, I get excited for this moment, for the moment you get full draw. Like, I get excited, just for the whole process. So I'm not saying that does aren't as valuable as bucks. I'm not saying that I get more excited for bucks. That's not what I'm saying. I guess I am in a way. Let's say I get more excited for a big buck or whatever, but it doesn't take anything away from the does. But I actually, like, this one made me feel like I'm staring at that giant buck. Like for some reason, like, I feel like there's a little bit of like, oh my goodness, this is that's her. So she's out there. There's 7 of them. 7 deer out there with her, and they're all within about 20 some yards of me, and they are, working over the corn that's on the ground. What I've noticed with this group of deer is that they don't like each other very much, apparently, because they are fighting a lot. It so happens there's 2 of them that get into it, and so they start running around chasing each other, and it draws the attention of all the other deer at them because it's the late season. They're skittish. They see something take off running. Their first instinct is to run themselves, but they kind of like look to see what was going on and seeing that these 2 were fighting, so they didn't take off. That gave me the opportunity to actually draw my bow in the blind, and it was enough to where that big doe had moved from her spot, which was about 20 yards. She kind of circled out and around and then stopped broadside and kind of looked back towards like the feeder in the blind, was kind of looking in that direction. So I'm already at full draw. I get her in the sights, level the pin, get that 30-yard pin sitting right on her heart, pull through the shot, watch the arrow the best I can, right? And, I'm watching I'm watching the spot I want to hit, pull through the shot breaks, and I could see where the arrow hits right exactly where I was aiming, right where I was looking. Like, if you know what I'm talking about, this, if you remember Kevin Meacham from Primos, his son, when he's hunting with him, he's like, I was aiming right at the top of the knee, because they're Southern. And so that's exactly where this arrow hits, like right on the top of the part where the shoulder, where the top part of the leg meets the lower part, right where the pump station is. The arrow goes completely through. The whole group takes off, runs into the woods. She's a little bit slower than the rest of them. I don't see her go down, but I know this is this is a done deal. So I get all my stuff gathered up. I walk out, find the arrow. It's covered in blood. And actually the ground, even with the ground being frozen, it's still penetrating into the ground, because I pulled it up, and the Sever hybrid had a bunch of grass and dirt stuck in it to where it actually still buried into the ground. It's a 475 grain arrow, 30-yard shot, complete pass through a very adult sized doe that is very fluffy because of her winter coat being on. So I have all my stuff. I go back to my truck, drop most of my gear off, except for the bare essentials of what I need for the recovery. This time around, I take the Uncle Stubbs drag bag with me. It's been in my truck for a while. I just never used it because it's. I'm like, well, it's snow on the ground. I'm by myself. Maybe this will, I'll test it out, see how this goes. So I pack it, and I leave my parka back at the truck because I know I'm gonna be pretty physically active at this point. So I just, I just got my base layers on with the bibs, kept my hand warmers with me, of course, and left that vest on, obviously, or that shirt on, and it's still running on medium. So I go get back on the blood trail, and I'm following blood, and great blood. It's sprayed up on trees. It's down on the ground, like a great blood trail, right? I kind of figured it was a great hit. I don't even think she made it about 60 yards. Maybe a little bit further than that. Because she tried to go uphill and I'm coming back downhill again. Get up to her, and she's just a ginormous freaking doe. Like one of the bigger ones I've ever seen, if not the biggest I've ever seen. Big doe. So I take my hand and take a photo of my hand next to her head. Her head is way bigger than my hand. Like she's a big doe, right? Big old doe. And I'm pretty sure the group that she was with, the property owner's like, well, she's probably grandma of some of them. And he's probably right. She's been there for a while, and that's probably in her family group. That's probably her daughters, and her daughter's daughters and younger and siblings. So she probably was grandma of the group. Got her field dressed out, and got her in the drag bag, got her attached to the drag strap. I started dragging her out. And I think what I said earlier, I'll say it again. Like it made it so much easier. The snow, it's a little bit easier in the snow anyways, especially snow that's, at this point in time, hasn't snowed a lot recently. So there's been some slight thawing and then refreezing. So it was nice and kind of crusty. So it made dragging a little bit easier, but this bag, way easier. And so easy, in fact, that, if I started to side hill a little bit, she'd want to start to slide down the hill. That's how much drag and friction that this bag reduced. It's fantastic. So I get back to the truck, get her loaded in. My goal is I'm going to take her over to Miller Custom Meat the next day, because this is the 24th in the afternoon. Miller's is open on Saturday for a very brief time from 7:30 to 11:30. So I take her back to the house. I get her hung up in the backyard and off one of our pine trees in the back. I get up this morning. Today's the 25th. Load her up, take her out to Miller's, drop her off, getting trail bologna and snack sticks made out of her. I get to pick those up next Saturday, which is the eve of the end of deer season in Ohio, which will be February 1st. And so looking forward to doing that. Yeah, that's deer number 4. Deer number 5 for the family altogether. Creston got his one. I've got 4 does now. Still no bucks yet, and I don't know if I'm going to be going back out again at all. If I do, it's going to be Harrison County. And since the early season, I really haven't done much out there. I don't know anything that's going on out there. I know there was a handful of people who had access to hunt out there. Not saying that deer activity's been bad, but I've seen it better out there this late in the game. I haven't really done anything out there. I haven't ran any feeders, haven't ran anything. I don't know. There's a part of me that wants to go out there and set something up and see what happens. And then there's another part of me that's like, you know what? You guys got 4 deer. You got 5 deer all together. Let's just call it a season and call for what it is. But there's a very small part of me that still wants to get the buck for the year, right? It's not going to be just any buck. Like, it's going to be a buck that I go, ooh, when I see it, right? I just don't have any intel out there right now. Like, I took all the cameras out of there to focus on the other property because of the mega being there. He's going to have to wait till next year. If he survives winter, which, I'm assuming he will. I just hope that somebody, isn't out doe hunting and makes a mistake and shoots him if he is shedding now and shoots him. I don't know. We'll see. I might. Yeah, that was the season. Pretty much the wrap up of the season. I gotta say, I like the Sever hybrids. They have performed flawlessly. Or 4 for 4 for deer, and I still like the iron wills. Like, I have like I said earlier, I don't blame the broadheads for that. That was, I don't know what happened there. To be quite honest with you, really don't know. I wish I was able to find the deer or have an idea where that shot ended up being, just so I knew exactly what had happened. But unfortunately, I'm not going to know. And, given the damage that was to the broadhead and obviously how the insert was bent, obviously it hit something hard. And it had to if the deer walked off with the arrow or took off with the arrow. So, hard to say. Really hard to say. So I don't blame it at all. Like, I still like them. Like, I would still use them. I just haven't had them back on the arrows because I just stuck with the Severs this year. Going into next year, I'll probably stay with the Severs. A change I am making next year is the arrows. Victory has come out with the new Hunt Long Range arrows, and I ordered my set of those, my practice set and a hunting set for next year. They're going to be a little bit lighter weight. I don't want to speculate, but I imagine I'm going to be down to about 425 with all together, maybe a little bit lighter than that of an arrow setup. And yeah, that's about it. That's about the only big change I know is coming. I mean, I'm sure there'll be a couple more changes before things are all said and done. I don't see any major changes coming to like the actual like hunting setup that I have, like saddle wise or platform, because I really like that stuff. That stuff has worked out really well for me. I know there's a lot of like actual one sticks that have the platforms attached to them and stuff. I don't know. I kind of like this hybrid approach where I have just the stick on its own and then the platform separate. That's really worked out really well for me. And I'm probably going to stick with that just the way it is. And I don't see any changes coming to that. Yeah, that's about it. I'm still kicking around the idea if I wanted to supplemental feed all year long now. There'll be some changes to the locations of some of the spots, but debating on if I'm going to supplemental feed the entire year or not. Still kicking that around. We'll see. Anyways, that's the deer season. 2024 going into 25 deer season. That might be a wrap. There might be one more. We'll see. Not sure yet. I need to make a decision pretty quick though. Only got 1 week left until that goes out. I'd like to thank you guys for hanging out with us today. For this one, it's actually longer than I thought it was going to be. It's pushing 2 hours now. It's an hour and 45 minutes. Will probably be about an hour and a half for you guys by the time it's all said and done. I'd like to thank you, everyone who took the time to sit down and listen to me ramble about this season and some of the things that I've been using this year and some things I'm looking forward to for next year. Might be another change coming. I'm not going to disclose that right now, but we'll see. We'll see how the off season goes and how this item performs during the off season, specifically during target season. How it goes, but might be another change. If not, the V3X is definitely going to be my number one bow, and we'll continue on. I am going to replace strings on it. I'm sticking with gas bow strings, but I think I'm going to switch to their System X. The Ghost strings I'm ready to switch out. I mean, I'm not having any major issues with them. I could probably get one more season out of them, but I shoot a lot, and this is 2 seasons, and I've shot a lot, and I think it's time just to replace them. So those are going to get replaced with the new System X, I think. And I'm still debating whether I want to rebuild the V3X or not. I think I'm probably not going to, because I don't see it's still performing really well. Because I thought about maybe replacing cams. I think the only thing, if I do get something else, it's going to be new mods for it. Stick with the same, obviously the same draw length and everything, but just get new mods for it. The end of them where they contact the cables is getting a little rough. So I might be switched. It might be time just to buy a new set of those. But I think the cams are doing well, limbs are doing well, the risers are doing good. So kicking around the idea, switch over to limb-driven rest too. Right now I have the integrated rest from QAD, which is cable-driven. I can see where the benefit of a limb-driven would come in, just for the simple fact that if I got to change the timing or work with the timing on my, which I didn't have to do a lot with the gas strings, but there was a couple times that not so much as recently, but there was a couple times that the timing just slightly, like I just had to put like a half twist or something in, and that could have been settling, that could have been a lot of things, right? But depending on which cable you're moving, that can affect the timing of the rest. So I could see where a limb driven would not be as affected by that. So that might be another change that's happening too. We'll see. We will see. But anyways, folks, I think that's it. I said it earlier, but I think I'm going to say it again. I think that's it. We're going on 2 hours. I think it's enough of me rambling about the season and what we're where we're at. Upcoming, I've got 2 events that I'm scheduled to go to. I'll be going to the Buckeye Big Buck Club banquet in Ashland on February 8th. So I'll be taking the podcast gear with me there, and have some scheduled interviews with some folks from ODNR and the biologist for the state, the head whitetail biologist for the state, and also hopefully get a couple interviews with some of the new inductees into the Buckeye Big Buck Club. And then at the end of the month, I'll be heading out to Trumbull County to sit in on the Big Deer Contest banquet. And likely I'll be taking the podcast gear with me there and sitting down with some of the kids and their families and having them talk about their experience and what that contest has meant for them and go from there. So look forward to those 2 events. If you're going to be at either one of them, maybe come check us out and come say hi, and we're glad to talk to you. But other than that, folks, I'm glad you took the time to sit and listen to us. I know that your time is valuable, and we do really, really appreciate that you decided to spend that time with us. We hope that you guys are getting out there and chasing the experience that you want, and that you're finding success in that experience. We also ask that if you take the moment to go ahead and leave a review for the podcast and share it with your friends if you think we're doing a good job, and also follow it on whatever platform that you're on. If you'd like to follow us on other socials, we're on YouTube and also Instagram. It's Country Fried Outdoor Production, spelled with a K, at YouTube, and Country Fried Outdoors on Instagram. I got to give a spoiler alert about, or maybe some bad news for YouTube. I think I'm going to really focus less on filming hunts in the future. I might do so for some special productions I have in mind, but I think the channel is going to start focusing more on the off season and maybe looking at gear, maybe things like that, or just some general vlog ideas during the summer or during the off seasons we prep for season, getting out and maybe filming a few more 3D shoots that we go out to. But I don't know. I'm still kicking that around because I do like the film. I like the process, but it's getting to be a little bit of a burden to be self-filming, and I don't have the resources to bring somebody on as a camera person to film. So we'll see. Still kicking the idea around. But yeah, check us out on YouTube, check us out on Instagram, and leave us a review and subscribe to both of those, or follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel. With that being said, folks, I think that's it. I think it's time to close this thing out. Until our experiences cross paths again, May y'all have the courage to fail, but yet have the humility to learn. And as always, we hope y'all stay safe out there. And God bless you. Thank you for listening to the Country Fried Outdoors Chasing Your Experience podcast. Before you go, don't forget to leave us a review and follow the show on the podcast platform of your choice. Are you hungry for more Country Fried Outdoors? Then follow us on Instagram at Country Fried Outdoors or subscribe to our YouTube channel at Country Fried Outdoor Productions.